Lovvorn, Congressman McGovern. Ladies and gentlemen, my name is Kathleen Gagney, and with great pleasure, I welcome you to Mechanics Hall and the candidates debate for the 2nd Congressional District in Massachusetts. October 17th is the last day you can register to vote for the November election. We have a representative for the League of Women Voters over there by the door. She's ready to take your registration, and she'll bring it to the registrar tomorrow if you aren't registered to vote yet. I'd like to recognize some elected officials who've joined us tonight. District Attorney Joseph Early, School Committee John Manfredo. And if there are others that I missed, you're welcome to stand and be recognized. Very good. As Worcester's host of culture and community, Mechanics Hall is proud of the fertile atmosphere it has provided for more than 160 years, in which the issues important to our citizens are discussed. Our mission is to ensure that Mechanics Hall is used for events that inspire, enrich, and enlighten all generations. I'm proud to say that the debate tonight is taking place in a room that has heard the voices of dozens of political candidates and likely every point of view about the political, social, and economic environment dating back to when we opened doors in 1857. Our candidates are in notable company. They join the litany of voices heard here in Mechanics Hall that includes 5 United States presidents, dozens of congressmen and senators, governors, and local government officials. Their voices join the historic voices of abolitionists, temperance, and women's rights advocates. These very walls have resonated with the words of Ralph Waldo Emerson, Teddy Roosevelt, Frederick Douglass, Lucy Stone, Abby Kelly Foster, William Lloyd Garrison, Horace Mann. Tonight we'll engage once again in debate of political viewpoints, this time about issues important in 21st century Massachusetts. We're delighted you are here, and thank you both for agreeing to take part. Mechanics Hall is pleased to be among tonight's debate sponsors, which include the Telegram and Gazette, the Worcester Regional Chamber of Commerce, the League of Women Voters of Massachusetts, and the League of Women Voters of the Worcester area, along with the Massachusetts Women of Color Coalition. Let's take a moment to thank them for their diligence. Questions for the candidates include questions submitted by residents of the 2nd Congressional District and will come from a 3-member panel. Merrill Kessler, Executive Director, the League of Women Voters of Massachusetts; Celia Blue, President and founding member, Massachusetts Women of Color Coalition; and Tony Similarities, editor of the editorial pages of the Telegram and Gazette, who will also act as moderator. Please welcome to the podium, Tony Similarities.
Thank you, Kathy, and thank you everyone for coming out tonight. This is a wonderful turnout. As Kathy said, this is great evening in a marvelous and historic building, which has been the setting for civic debates, speeches, and gatherings going back prior to the Civil War. With its tradition of both civic as well as civil discourse, we see this in a long line of that. And speeches and conversations that have been entwined with the nation's history. I'm Tony Similarities, as you heard, editor of the editorial page. And I'm here to talk to you about a little bit about the workings of the debate and the rules of the road. We solicited and received a number of questions from residents. In fact, we were blown away by not just the quality, but the number of questions we got from across central Massachusetts and the district, reflecting their concerns. We were guided by what they wanted to know. So most of the questions you hear will be coming directly from residents who asked us. the order in which the speakers proceed, and even the chair that they took. So Mr. McGovern's on the left and Ms. Lovvorn is on the right because of a coin toss, strictly coincidence. And also the order in which various parts went on. And as I said, with those three responses, or resident responses, we were able to categorize in general categories the topics that we wanted to cover. And just like the coin tosses, we gave these topics to both candidates, and we kind of set them in an order based on what we heard from readers. And those topics are health and healthcare, human rights and opportunity, political division, immigration, international affairs, climate and the environment, and economic development. Now, keeping us on schedule tonight, because we don't want to be here till midnight, and I guarantee you we won't be. We have our timekeepers tonight, and that's a very important and also exacting responsibility. The two timekeepers are Janet Davis from the League of Women Voters, and Latasha Thomason from the Massachusetts Women of Color Coalition. Now, they will raise a green card when there's 30 seconds left. And when there is 15 seconds left, they'll raise a yellow card that also says 15 seconds. And with 5 seconds remaining, they'll raise a red card saying it's time to stop, and you have 5 minutes to stop. And here's where we need your cooperation. We have a lot of ground to cover tonight. And with that history here of civic as well as civil discussion, we've told the campaigns that except for introducing the candidates, as we just did, there will be no clapping, no cheering, no outbursts of any kind in the course of the debate. The only exception, the candidates are welcomed, and also following the closing remarks after both of them have made their closing remarks. And then again, in the acknowledgments, when the next person comes up here to thank everybody, certainly at that time, after that as well. We've told the candidates, please, no campaign signs or posters or even apparel in the candidates hall. So if you're wearing a t-shirt, please zipper up your jacket if that's the case. And finally, everyone, please make sure your cell phones are off. Do that right now. And while you're doing that, I just want to remind you that in addition to the media that you see here, this entire debate is being streamed live on the Telegram and Gazette's Facebook Live site. And in addition to that, it's going out to all our sister Gatehouse newspapers, such as the Metro West Daily News and the Milford Daily News, which have communities that they serve that are in this district. So, thank you. With that said, we'll get underway. And why not give the candidates another round of applause? I wanted to also recognize a familiar face. Harriet Chandler just came in. So thank you. So we'll get started. Opening statements in the order determined by the coin toss are 2 minutes each, with Tracy Lovvorn going first. This means that James McGovern will go first when it comes time for the closing statements. Ms. Lovvorn?
Thank you. I'm not super polished at this, all right? So just bear with me. I'm going to do the best I can, just like I'll do the best I can in everything I've ever done. Thank you to everybody that's here, the sponsors. Thank you to all the participants. Thank you for my family for being here. And thank you for this great audience, both here and at home. You know, I think we can all agree on something. We've got to at least be able to agree that our government is broken. Our Congress is dysfunctional, and it has been for a long time. I'm not convinced, and I believe that after 22 years of being in Congress, what more can our current congressman possibly do? What more can he do? He's down there, he's part of the dysfunction. He's part of the fabric of the dysfunction. You know, I've worked in corporate America for a long time in healthcare. I stood up to corporate fraud. I protected our seniors, and I brought back hundreds of millions of dollars to Medicare. And it's because when I recognize a problem, I want to search a solution. I want to actively find a way to fix it, and I want to make sure that I'm always standing on the side of right. Mr. McGovern has been in office for at least 22 years. I challenge everybody to go home and do some Google search. In his first 20 years of office, Jim McGovern wrote 8 bills that went through and were signed. 6 of them were naming post offices and government buildings. Yet, even then, right now today, out of 435 members of the House, he's the 60th most wealthy. He aligns with his party 95% of the time. He represents his party, not our district.
Mr. McGovern, you have 2 minutes.
Well, thank you, and I want to thank the sponsors, I want to thank the audience for being here, I want to thank Ms. Lovvorn for participating, and let me say at the outset that I have a different opinion of me than my opponent. I think I'm kind of a nice guy, and I think I've been a hell of a good congressman. And, I was born and raised here in Worcester, son of 2 small business owners, Mindy and Walter McGovern, who raised me to believe that everybody is important, that everybody matters, and nobody is invisible. I have 2 sisters who are school teachers here. They remind me every day how important it is that every child has access to a first-class education. I'm married to my wife, Lisa, who we're going to celebrate our anniversary, 29-year anniversary on Friday before the election. She works for a nonprofit called the Prevent Cancer Foundation, and I'm proud of her work. I'm inspired by her work. I have 2 wonderful kids, Patrick, who's 20, who's in college, Molly, who's 17, going on 30, and every single day I learn something new from my kids. But when I first ran for Congress, I ran because I cared deeply about this community. I cared deeply about the people who live here. I wanted to make things better. I wanted to change things for the better. And I think over the years I have. Look around this city and this region and the development going on here. You know, whether it's Union Station, or the Gardner Kilby Hammond neighborhood development in Maine South, or the Hanover Theater, or the revitalization in the Canal District, or the Blackstone bike path, or the airport, or the Gateway Park project we worked on with the WBDC and WPI. 500 new jobs, paying over $1 million in tax revenue to the city. I want to go back to Washington because we need to focus on the issue of inequality. You know, if you look at the statistics, the corporate profits are going up, wages are stagnant. When I go into coffee shops in Worcester, people tell me they're working 2 or 3 jobs to make ends meet. We need to do better. I want to fight to strengthen the middle class and those struggling to get in the middle.
Thank you. Now, based on the number of resident questions that we received, we begin with health and healthcare. Based on a coin toss, Mr. McGovern will answer first for up to 1 minute, followed by Ms. Lovvorn, who will have 1 minute to respond to the same question. We will then alternate who goes first. Merrill Kessler will ask the first question.
Mr. McGovern, a Worcester resident asked this question. Being the parent of a wonderful son who suffered from depression and at the age of 28 died of an unintentional overdose, I've heard much said and promised regarding the opioid crisis. What will you do to combat addiction here in this congressional district in Massachusetts and at the federal level?
Well, that's an excellent question, and I, like many people in this hall, have been to too many funerals where too many parents have buried their children. It is heartbreaking, and this is a crisis, and we need to do much more. I have worked with the local district attorney to try to help his office get additional funds to combat the crisis. We have worked with the opiate task force in Franklin County. We have been working with with community health centers here in Worcester and across the district, making sure they get the funds necessary to combat this terrible crisis. We need more mental health counselors in our schools. We need to make sure that we treat this issue as a healthcare issue and not a criminal justice issue. One of the things that we need to do is understand that if this is a crisis, we need to make sure that the funding is there. Rather than spend trillions of dollars on tax cuts for the wealthiest 1% in this country, we ought to understand that that money would be better invested in combating this opioid crisis.
Ms. Lovvorn?
When it comes to depression, I know that firsthand. My mom committed suicide when I was 6 years old. When it comes to mental health in this country, it's a huge issue, and it's been a huge issue for quite a number of years, actually a lot of years. If you look down in some of the school shootings even, down in Newtown, that mom knew something was wrong with her son. She was actively looking for help for years. It's documented for 4 years she wanted help. There was no help to be had. Right now, we have health insurance. I think that our physical health insurance should be equivalent to our mental health insurance. And treatment programs, state-paid treatment programs are known to not work, but there are programs available that do work. We're better off putting our money into programs that work and having them actually work in a longer amount of time, but just doing it once instead of recycling through the same programs over and over.
Our next question for Ms. Lovvorn will be asked by Celia Blue, followed by Mr. McGovern.
Ms. Lovvorn, discussion around single-payer health care has picked up significantly. Regardless of what system is employed, what would you do to make health care accessible, equitable, and of high quality for all?
Right now our healthcare system, again, I'm a physical therapist, I'm a small business owner, I have my own private practice there in Grafton. Right now, if we change the payer, it doesn't change the cost of healthcare. With Medicaid, Mass Health, if somebody comes into my clinic, I'll treat them for an hour, I might get paid $35 for that visit. I'm paying my clinician $40 for that visit. It doesn't work. So just because we have coverage for everybody doesn't mean that the cost changes. We need to focus on cost changing, and that's when we make it available across state lines, we increase the competition, we publish the prices, and we focus on quality outcomes. We also need to look at the physician fee schedule. Right now, that physician fee schedule, it's incorrect. You can put a bill in for $300, but you get $60 back.
Yeah, look, I believe everybody in this country ought to have health insurance. I believe health care ought to be a right for every single individual in this country. And I think one of the problems with our healthcare system is it's too focused on making profits for insurance companies, for drug companies. We need to find a way to lower the cost of prescription drugs for our seniors. I've advocated giving Medicare the ability to negotiate on bulk with the pharmaceutical companies for all the Medicare beneficiaries to lower those prescription drug costs. We need to deal with these pharmacy benefit managers, which I think are ripping people off. We need more transparency. I met with a group of people today who are advocating for more research for diabetes. They were telling me that insulin is significantly cheaper in Canada than it is in the United States by hundreds of dollars. This is ridiculous. We need to get this right, and I can't believe that we can't. It means standing up to the insurance companies and to the pharmaceutical companies. That's what I've tried to do, and that's what I would do if I go back to Congress.
Thank you. Our next category, based on questions from residents, includes a series of questions on human rights. Celia Blue will ask the question to Mr. McGovern.
Mr. McGovern, where do you believe that Massachusetts stands as a place of authentic inclusion? Do you believe that girls and women of color here face unequal outcomes? And if so, what steps would you take to eliminate racial inequities in education, income, and criminal justice?
Well, I still believe that we have significant problems here in Massachusetts, as we do across the country. We're making strides in the right direction, but we need to do more to have true inclusion. We need to level the playing field and making sure that every child gets access to a first-class education. That's why I helped found the Latino Education Institute, because we were finding out that the graduation rates for Latino students was significantly less than for other students. So we formed an organization to try to go figure out how we could do this better. We need to make sure that all of our schools are equal, that we're investing as much in schools in the inner city and in the low-income neighborhoods as we are in the high-income neighborhoods. And we need to create a culture here where young people can see that there is such a thing as inclusion in our work practices, in our businesses, and in our city government. And so, I think we have a long way to go.
Yeah, I honestly probably agree with Mr. McGovern on that one. There's really not ever an opportunity when we can't do better when it comes to inclusion, when it comes to providing success and opportunities. I do like the idea when they talk about, if there is another school that's doing better, you should have the right to be able to go out of your district and be able to, the voucher program and different things that they talked about. I think that does help facilitate some of those inequalities as well. And that's something that's usually fought against, but I think for the most part, I think we agree on a lot of that.
Ms. Lovvorn, women's issues, such as the long-term reauthorization of the Violence Against Women Act, seem to have become sidelined in Congress amid partisan warfare. What is the role of Congress on issues such as ending abuse and violence against women and resolving reproductive rights issues? What is your opinion of where we are today with respect to women's rights, and what will you accomplish in the next 2 years?
So if I get the question right, could you, when it comes to violence against women, it's against the law already, and so it's making it to where it's just enforcing the laws that are already there. As far as reproductive rights for women, I think I need you to clarify the question.
Where do you stand on reproductive rights situation, and what would you do in the next 2 years?
Is the question Roe versus Wade? Is it abortion? Is it availability of contraception? What's the specific question?
Access to abortion.
It's accessible. I mean, Roe v. Wade is already established law. It's on the books. I'm struggling with understanding your question.
There's a concern that in some areas, some states are reducing access to reproductive care. So the question is, what would you do as a member of Congress on that front?
Support the laws as they're already written.
So I support the Violence Against Women Act, and it was frustrating that it became a political football. And the Republicans in Congress chose to load it up with all kinds of extraneous issues. And it really is quite sad. This is an issue that should be bipartisan. Women's reproductive rights, I'm pro-choice. And I have fought against attempts by the Republican Congress to chip away at a woman's right to choose. One of the reasons why I'm really concerned now, in light of Judge Kavanaugh's ascension to the Supreme Court, is I worry that Roe versus Wade will be overturned. There's now a Supreme Court that I believe is staunchly anti-choice. And that given the opportunity, if the state decides to restrict a woman's right to choose, and that case makes its way to the Supreme Court, I worry that Roe versus Wade will be overturned. And I really also have to say, I resent the fact that a primarily male-dominated Congress makes decisions on women's reproductive rights.
Mr. McGovern, do you believe there's a school-to-prison pipeline primarily affecting people of color? What steps did you take in addressing criminal justice reform, including the school-to-prison pipeline?
Look, we need criminal justice reform in this country, and I thought we were making progress on it. Democrats and Republicans were actually working together prior to this last presidential election to try to come up with some fresh ideas so that we could address some of the issues that have plagued our country. I mean, African Americans are 12% of our population, yet they're 33% of the prison population. There's something wrong here. We need to address the bail system. We need to revisit mandatory minimums. We need to make sure that there are alternatives to putting somebody in jail, especially young people. We ought to understand that jail means that the likelihood of them succeeding becomes less and less. We ought to be able to help get them back into schools and get them back on the right track. So we have a problem with our criminal justice system that needs to be addressed, and unfortunately right now it isn't. And I hope that if we could take back to Congress, that will be a top priority for the Democrats.
I think it has been actually in the news quite a bit lately that people are putting more attention on that. That was just last week, we had Conway West in the House and they were talking about it. So it is becoming front and center. There's always ways to make things better and better. But the fact is, again, this isn't anything new. All these problems that we're talking about, these have been problems that have been facing us for quite some time. And I'm just wondering what Mr. McGovern has proposed, what legislation has he actually written, what bill has he come up to for any one of these ideas that he sits here and talks so passionately about. There's not one. He's been there for 22 years. All these issues, he's never addressed them.
Ms. Lovvorn, a local resident asked, how would you address the issue of violence in society, including gun violence?
How would I address gun violence in society? Earlier we were talking about the mental health issue. That's 100% something that we have to all agree on when it comes to the opioid epidemic, when it comes to the increased suicide rate. Right now, the #1 cause of death for our middle schoolers is suicide, even more so than accidents. That's something that should be a concern of all of us. The gun violence, the suicide rates, we need to get a handle on our mental health, and that's been, again, for years and years and years. What type of bill, what kind of legislation has our congressman proposed to try to help mental health in our society?
Yeah, well, thank you for the question. One is when I supported the Affordable Care Act, which extends the coverage for mental health services, which is something that was denied to people for many, many years. Secondly, we need to do something about gun violence in this country, and that means getting serious about gun control. I have talked to too many parents in this community. I have talked to the parents who lost their children in Sandy Hook. I have talked to students and parents who have lost loved ones in Parkland and so many other instances in this country. Every hour somebody is being killed by a gun in this country. And what I want to do, and what I've been pushing, is that we expand universal background checks, that we ban bump stocks, that in this country you cannot, if you're on a terrorist watch list, you can't fly on an airplane, but yet you can buy a gun. That doesn't make any sense. We ought to ban assault weapons. We ought to support these young people all across the country who are demanding that we stand up to gun violence and do something. And unfortunately, the Republicans in Congress have blocked every single attempt to be able to have a debate or a vote on legislation, and that has to change. Too many lives are being lost.
Chicago, can we settle down? Please don't embarrass your candidates. We ask that there be no outburst. It's only going to delay us. So if you can take care of that, then we can get through this in an expeditious manner. Thank you very much. Thank you, everyone.
Are we allowed to rebut?
No.
Wow, okay.
I mean, we get into rebuttals. One candidate will have a rebuttal, and then the other candidate, 30 seconds as well. So it's, just keep going back and forth if you'd like to do that.
I just wanted to mention something when it comes to universal background checks that I think we can all agree on. Right now with universal background checks, the ACLU is even looking, when you're on a terrorist watch list, you cannot get off of that list. There is no due process. There's not a process to get off. If we could fix that, then maybe we might have a chance to have a universal background check. You gotta get to a root cause. That's what I'm talking about. Get to a root cause, then fix a problem, and then you can move forward. Or you could just talk, and not get anything done.
Well, if I could rebut,
Governor, you have 40 seconds.
yeah, I would just simply say that there is a process if you're on a terrorist watch list to be able to get off the list. That's just a fact. But secondly, we have a problem in this country, and I'm sorry that we can't even have a debate in the United States Congress on this issue. The gun lobby, with all their money, they bankrolled the president, they bankrolled the Congress. We can't even bring a bill to the floor on universal background checks. Here's the deal. If you don't like it, if you don't like the idea of expanding universal background checks or banning assault weapons, vote no. But this is a serious enough issue where people are dying each and every day. We ought to have that debate.
Mr. McGovern, 268 settlements and awards totaling more than $17 million in federal funds were paid on behalf of Congress and its other agencies over a 20-year period. A portion of that total was for members of Congress settling sexual harassment complaints, as well as complaints of discrimination, retaliation, and pay disputes. A Worcester resident has asked if you're willing to have the information of these cases made public.
Absolutely, and I think the fact that that existed is disgusting. I don't think I didn't know about it, and most people didn't know. If a member of Congress abuses somebody on his or her staff, if they sexually assault somebody, they ought to be held to account. And if there's a suit, they ought to pay it out of their own pocket. It ought not to be the taxpayers that pay for it. We are right now trying to get enshrined in the rules of the House and Senate in a language that would basically make that impossible, that it cannot happen again. The members of Congress would be held accountable. We're having some resistance from the people who run the Congress right now. If we can take back control of the House, and I'm chairman of the Rules Committee, we're in charge of writing the rules package, and I guarantee you that in that rules package will be language that would make that, that would basically ban that type of practice. If members of Congress do anything wrong, they're like anybody else, they ought to be held to account to the full extent of the law.
I agree with that part. What I don't understand is how you can be a member of Congress for 22 years and not know that that was going on. And where was the outrage as it was happening? You know, again, we're going to go through this over and over again. What more? How could you be there for 22 years and say that you don't know that existed? That's just irresponsible, because those are people that you're working with. Those are the people that you hold in high account. They're representing our country. And you allowed that to happen.
Our next issue, which was another topic receiving several questions, but we boiled it down to a single question, and that's on political division. Some are calling it tribalism that's going on, that's afflicting Washington and affecting not just Washington, but our society as a whole. And I'll ask this question. Ms. Lovvorn, a Holden resident began his question with, I have become increasingly disgusted with the rancor and bitterness between our elected representatives. Once elected, you are representing all of your constituents. whether they be independent, Republican, Democrat, Green Party, or whatever. How would you lead as a role model in reaching across the aisle in representing all your constituents?
That's exactly why I'm running, and that's exactly what has been missing from our district for the last 10 years since we were, well, 8 years since we were redistricted. When I'm running as a representative, I'm running to represent you. I'm not running to represent my personal ideals. Our current congressman has been very outspoken with him representing what he feels is right. That's not how I'm going to be your representative. That's not the way it's supposed to be. When it comes to bipartisanship, our current congressman is the least bipartisan Congress member in Massachusetts for our whole delegation. He's consistently ranked the 5th most extreme partisan member in the House, and that's throughout his entire career. That's nothing new. It's time for us to get back to Tip O'Neill and Ronald Reagan. It's time for us to work together and get things done. We need conservative Democrats and moderate Republicans, and it is possible.
Mr. McGovern?
Well, I didn't know moderate Republicans existed anymore. No, I don't think so.
That's the problem.
No, but let me just say this. I think one of the problems that we're having right now is the tone that is being set by the President of the United States. And when the leader of the free world gets up every day and calls on his supporters to lock up his opponents, we have a problem. And I will say, Mr. Lovvorn, I've worked with people like John McCain. We passed my bill, the Magnitsky Act, which you don't want to give me credit for. We passed that together to hold Russian human rights violators accountable. I've worked in a bipartisan way with Senator Susan Collins. I had a House bill, she had a Senate bill, in which we empowered grandparents who are raising their grandchildren because their kids are addicted to opiates. I've worked in a bipartisan way to move my legislation through the House. And I have a lot, and I treasure bipartisanship.
Thank you. Our next set of questions is on immigration, with the first question to Ms. Lovvorn. And because this is a very large, complex issue, we're offering you up to 2 minutes each on the question.
Ms. Lovvorn, residents from South Deerfield to Northridge asked, what are your thoughts on immigration? From border security to the question of undocumented immigrants, to the rights of sanctuary cities, to access to social welfare program, and what should be done with the 12 million people already here illegally?
That's a big question. My thoughts on immigration are the exact same thoughts that I remember Bill Clinton talking about. They're the exact same thoughts that I remember George Bush talking about. Exact same thoughts that President Obama was talking about. And they're exactly the same thoughts and words that President Trump are using today. And I know people aren't going to believe that, but go to YouTube and Google it, and you will see the exact same language. We have been having an immigration problem in this country for decades. Talk about political footballs going back and forth, back and forth. My opponent, he went down to Honduras in 2014. Just 2 months ago, he went back down to Honduras to see what was going on down there. My question would be, has anything changed? No, it hasn't. It's time for us to actually implement things that have been said for the last 20, 30 years. We need increased border security. We need an easier way to get through immigration. It should be easier. Right now, it's easier to come here illegally, and it's too expensive and too cumbersome to come here legally. That's ridiculous. And half the time, we don't even know how to do it. When I talk to people, they're going through the process. It's 15, 20 years. It's too cumbersome. We need to fix the process. We've needed to fix the process for a long time. I think Massachusetts, I think we should take the lead on fixing this. We're a smart state. We can figure this out. We need to fix it. As far as the people that are here illegally right now, we need to help them. We need to identify them. We need to make sure that they get acknowledged. and they get put right back in the back of the line so that they can go through the process, and we need to make a better process for them.
Thank you. This is an important question. We need comprehensive immigration reform. When George W. Bush was president, he proposed a bill that the Senate passed the bipartisan way. I supported it in the House, but the Republican leadership refused to bring it up for a vote. They chose to make immigration and immigrants a political football. I think that's disgusting. This president has made this an even more polarizing issue. He basically ended protections for the Dreamers. He basically said to people who hold TPS status, people who have been here for 20 years legally, who have obeyed the laws, because that's what they have to do in order to get this, that we're going to deport you. These are people who have families, who have kids, who have businesses. So we need a more humane immigration policy. We have a president right now who is separating children from parents at the border. That's child abuse. That is disgusting. That is beneath our values. And I think most Americans share that view. You know, the bottom line is things are very bad in Honduras and El Salvador. But boy, I'm sorry, I can't take responsibility for all the turmoil in all the world. I think I have some ideas on how we can fix it. But if you want to stem immigration from our southern border, we need to get serious about working with these countries to stabilize their governments, to promote their economies, to deal with issues of impunity, to deal with the issues of gangs. I mean, this is a solvable issue. But in the meantime, these are people who are fleeing violence. They're fleeing for their lives with their kids. They're expecting some compassion in the United States, and instead they are being separated from their children. They're being held in detention indefinitely. We have kids who are being held in detention indefinitely in violation of the Flores case, which says that you can only hold children for 30 days. We need to do better. What's happening right now betrays our values.
Mr. McGovern, back to 1 minute.
Okay.
There is currently strong support in some quarters to cut back the number of illegal immigrants, including refugees, family members of people already here, and people seeking to become permanent residents, including through lottery programs. What would be your approach to legal immigration?
Yeah, so the announcement by the administration to cut back our acceptance of refugees from 110,000 down to 45,000, now down to 30,000, I think is unconscionable. The world is facing the worst refugee crisis since World War II. And we are expecting other countries in Europe and around the world to accept these refugees fleeing the worst violence imaginable. People fleeing violence in Honduras, in Syria, and in other countries that are in turmoil. And rather than being part of the solution and leading the world in trying to address this problem, we're walking away from this problem. I mean, I look at our history. I mean, when we did this during World War II, we turned our back on Jewish immigrants fleeing persecution from the Nazis. We look back on that now with great shame. I think we're going to look back on this chapter with great shame too as we turn our backs on people fleeing violence, especially those fleeing violence in Syria.
You know, I have to say something on that. We didn't turn our backs. That's completely wrong! There's 10 World War II books that prove that wrong!
I'll put it down as undecided.
Straight on. Yeah, I am on the side. Yeah.
Ms. Lovvorn.
You know, of course, we always want to be an open population as far as we do have big hearts. Americans always have. And we want to help wherever we possibly can. At the same token, we want to make sure that we're trying to keep people where they're most comfortable as well. You know, when you just open your doors and people come in freely, they don't have time do we even know that they want to come here? You know, when Syrian refugees were going through Turkey and going up through Germany, and Germany took so many. I remember listening on NPR, and a lot of them didn't want to be in Germany. They wanted to be home, they wanted to be in Syria, and yeah, it wasn't safe. So what can we do to help promote people to be safer where they currently are? That's what I would try to push. You know, we can't take everybody, even though we would like to, but what can we do to make them safer in their own countries?
Our next set of questions is on international issues. Celia Blue asking the first question of Ms. Lovvorn.
Ms. Lovvorn, Northborough residents ask, what is your position on Saudi Arabia's war being waged with U.S. assistance in Yemen? Should our country continue its military support of Saudi Arabia? And how should the U.S. respond to the disappearance of a Saudi journalist for the Washington Post who disappeared after entering the Saudi Arabia consulate in Istanbul 2 weeks ago?
Yeah, you know, that is such a brand new happening. I know Congressman, he was you know, posting about it and talking a lot about it. I honestly know that one of the things that I've learned throughout my career is you can't control things that you can't control, and right now I do not have enough information to be able to even speak to that. That's a military issue that I'm not in Congress yet. I don't have an answer for that.
Mr. McGovern?
Look, I think if the United States stands for anything, we need to stand out loud and foursquare for human rights. I think what the Saudi government is doing in Yemen is despicable. I mean, they are bombing innocent people. They are bombing school buses filled with children. It is shocking. And there ought to be a consequence. And what happened with the Washington Post journalist, allegedly he was interrogated, tortured, and then dismembered in the Saudi consulate in Turkey. How can we not respond? And I think I've introduced legislation today basically saying that we should terminate any arms sales or security sales to Saudi Arabia, and that if the president wants to do it, he needs to come to Congress and ask for approval. We have to take a stand. I mean, you know, if we're not going to take a stand on human rights, then nobody will. I mean, what happened was despicable.
Mr. McGovern, a Princeton resident asked, would you vote in favor of U.S. military intervention if Russia were to invade a NATO ally?
Well, under our NATO obligations, we have to respond. I mean, we're part of NATO. That's what we do. You know, I'm you know, very much somebody who believes a war ought to be a last resort. But if Russia were to invade our ally, not only us, but all the other NATO allies would have to come to the table. That's the agreement we have. I think we need to get tougher with Russia, since you asked a question about Russia. I think we need to find out what they did to our elections. And I think we need to get tough with Putin, who I think is one of the biggest thugs on the planet.
As far as Russia invading a NATO ally, same answer. I just want to make an observation that our congressman is hitting every single talking point for his party. You know, when I said earlier that Jim McGovern aligns with his party, he aligns with his party 95% of the time he votes for his party. How often is he voting for our district? That's the question that I would like to ask each of you to go home and ask yourselves and do a little research.
Ms. Lovvorn, a Barry resident asks, Congress allocates over $500 billion to military spending yearly. Is that share adequate, too much, or too little? And if money were to be out, or cut, I should say, where would it be better spent? Or if added, where else would you cut?
You know, the amount of money that our military needs is whatever amount of money it takes to make sure that we're able to fulfill our obligations here at home for our safety, as well as our obligations across the world. You know, to ask where we can cut, that's a question for General Mattis. You know, I don't know exactly where every dollar goes and where it's spent for our military. I know that we finally were able to get increased military spending this year, a bill that Mr. McGovern voted no on. And our military guys finally got raises. We finally got some upgrades to our equipment. We need a strong military. That's what keeps us safe, and that's what keeps us able to provide for every other country that we possibly can to keep them safe as well.
Yeah, look, I support a military second to none, and I support doing everything we can for our troops. But I think our military budget overall is excessive. We're spending money on weapon systems that are impractical in this day and age. We're spending trillions on more nuclear weapons when we should be leading the world in trying to abolish nuclear weapons. Yeah, I voted against the defense bill, Ms. Lovvorn, because one of the things that drives me crazy is the fact that we have people get up and give speeches about supporting our troops, and they send them off to war in places like Afghanistan, and Congress doesn't even pay for the war. It all goes on our credit card. And my view is if you're going to send American servicemen and women into war, then we all ought to pay for it. And if we're not prepared to pay for it, we ought not to send them to war. And so I'm tired of putting these wars on our credit card, and so that's why I voted no on the defense bill.
We also received questions on the environment and climate, so our next question is from that.
Mr. McGovern, a Worcester resident states that under President Trump, national monuments are shrinking, new offshore drilling is being promoted, EPA staff is being cut, fuel economy standards are being degraded, and many environmental regulations are being cut back. Where do you stand on these and other regulatory changes?
Yeah, I'm against what this president is doing. And I believe climate change is real. I can't believe it's controversial to say that in the United States Congress. The president was on 60 Minutes last night and couldn't even say that climate change is real and that it's man-made. It is. And what we ought to be doing is not what he's doing, which is promoting fossil fuels, going back to coal. I mean, CO2 levels are down in large part because of the steps taken by the Obama administration. Now we're being told that they're going to go in the opposite direction because everything that President Obama did, this president is reversing. I think we need to invest more in clean, green, renewable energy. We need to start weaning ourselves off of fossil fuels. We need to understand that there's great opportunity not only for our planet, but for jobs in the clean, green energy field. And look at the hurricanes in Florida and in Puerto Rico. The intensity of these storms. It is because climate change is exacerbating conditions that are leading to these dramatic storms.
You know, when it comes to climate change, I think what Mr. McGovern just did just now, you know what? The majority of people believe in climate change. Let's focus on that. When it comes to the cause of climate change, that's what gets everybody upset and angry. But if we can focus what we all agree on, we agree on climate change. All right, so now what can we do about it? Right now, a lot of our green energy, it's still kind of clunky. You know, solar energy, it's good. It's not as good as what it needs to be. It's not enough yet. It's not as efficient and effective as it needs to be. And yeah, we need to continue to give money to research and make that better, but it's not there yet. And when it comes to decreasing regulations, I'm all for that. If you've ever worked in healthcare, you got to understand it's not getting rid of regulations, it's decreasing excessive regulations. If you call my clinic, I have to put a message on my phone that says, if this is an actual emergency, please hang up and call 911. I'm a physical therapist. That's a stupid regulation.
Ms. Lovvorn, a Worcester resident and a Northborough resident both asked about climate change, expressing concern over hurricane devastation from Florence and now a Michael. Not to mention, Massachusetts having seen an influx of people from Puerto Rico who still can't go home because of last year's devastation. Now a new UN report says millions across the world could see life-threatening heat, drinking water shortages, and rising tides in as little as 12 years unless there's a radical reduction in emissions even greater than the Paris Agreement. What will you do for Massachusetts and the world regarding climate issues involving regional warming, sea level rise, and ocean acidification from increased levels of CO2?
You know, when you look overall at the United States, we have a very large population, but the number of our admissions compared to the number of our population is already extremely low. In fact, we lead the world on that. Can it be better? Yes. Should it be better? Yes. And again, I think that's something we all can agree on. What the United States can do to influence and impact China, what can we do to impact and influence India? Those are some very large populations, and that's where we need to reach across, develop those relationships, and try to impact overseas as well. We can't take this on all ourselves. We could try, it's not going to work. But we need to reach across and try to make things happen in other countries as well. Again, to put all that on our country, we're already doing a good job. And yeah, we need to get better, but we need those other countries, it wipes out everything good that we try to do.
Well, Mr. Lovvorn, I don't think we agree, because if you don't agree that climate change is man-made, then we can't agree on the solutions. And because I think man can change their practices. And embracing coal, as this administration is doing, or rolling back fuel efficiency standards that were put in by the Obama administration, which were not objected to by the auto industry, doesn't make any sense to me. And yes, we need to work with other countries, and that's what the Paris Accord was all about. And it was bringing all the countries of the world together to figure out how we could solve this problem. And what happened? President Trump came into office and he walked away from it. And again, last night on 60 Minutes, he didn't even concede that this is a real issue. Well, I'm going to tell you, I've been to Puerto Rico twice. It's a real issue. Look at what's happening in Florida right now. It's a real issue. Look what happened in Texas. It's a real issue. I mean, if we don't, and we just have a group of scientists all over the world who just said if we don't do something within the next decade, it will be too late. So we need to act now.
I know we're not supposed to rebut, but that's fine. The thing is when we walk away from the Paris Agreement, it's because the United States of America was the primary backer of that. It's not enough for us to do that. Yes, they were all in agreement, but we were taking the brunt of it. It's not enough for us to do it by ourselves. And the fear, yes, we can agree that we could do better, but right now we have to have both of those energies working together as we invest in the other energies so that they can take over. But we can't just get rid of one when the other one's not good enough yet.
Mr. McGovern, you have 45 seconds.
With respect, if you read the Paris Climate Accord, all the burden is done on the United States. And all the goals are voluntary. And so if we get to the point where we felt we couldn't reach a certain goal or was unreasonable, we had the option to revisit it. And other countries around the world committed to doing their fair share to help some of the poorer countries around the world reach the goals that they needed to reach. Look, this is a big deal, and we're running out of time. And it's become a political football that, and for reasons I can't quite understand. Scientists have told us this is a problem. We ought to deal with it. And we ought not to be reversing some of the positive steps that we've made, and we certainly should not be embracing coal and more fossil fuels.
Our next category of questions concerns economic development.
Mr. McGovern, small to medium-sized businesses, including here in central Massachusetts, have expressed concern over having to deal with tariffs in the current trade situation. What will you support regarding the issue of tariffs in the near future, and what companies have to brace for this additional risk?
So the one thing I agree with President Trump on is that many of our trade agreements have not been fair to American workers. Where I disagree with him is his response, which was to go super nuclear with all these tariffs. And what I've heard from businesses all across this district is that we have businesses that are suffering, that are talking about laying people off, that are some are even talking about potentially closing. Look, the way you resolve your disputes with countries like China is you work with the World Trade Organization. You work with other nations. You use other leverage. But what he did is just put these across-the-board tariffs in place, and China issued counter retaliatory tariffs. My hope is that maybe after this election, no matter what the outcome, is that Democrats and Republicans will come together and revisit this issue. Yes, we want fair trade agreements. We want better trade agreements. But what is happening here is not getting us to that goal, and in fact is undercutting American industry.
You know, anytime that Mr. McGovern throws up a dog whistle, it just brings me back to last fall when we were this close to supposedly having a nuclear war with Korea. And he was so like, oh my gosh, we're going to have a nuclear war. Look, the fact is the tariffs are working, and yeah, it's a little rough, but if you look at what's happening in the steel industry already, they already opened up 2 new factories. The steel workers are getting increased wages, and yeah, it's in Kentucky, but it's happening. I was just literally talking to farmers, just Sunday, and we were talking about the dairy tariffs. And yeah, it's hurting them a little bit right now, but you know what they told me? They said, you know what, Tracy? We saw what happened with steel. We're going to play it out. We're going to make this happen, because sometimes when you make change, it hurts a little bit. But you know what? It's worth it in the long run, and we've seen that over and over again, and North Korea is a perfect example.
Ms. Lovvorn, the Worcester residents ask about support for students struggling with college debt. What is the right approach to that problem?
You know what, that's a perfect question for me. I have 2 sons that are in college right now. I had a student loan that lasted over 20 years of my life trying to pay off. The student debts are terrible. I think the best solution is to bridge the gap between government and working with industry, working with the colleges. One of my sons is a computer science major. You know, I look at an example of like the GI Bill, except for working with industry. You know, working with Apple, working with Amazon, letting them identify these kids at young ages, even in junior high, high school. If they have an affinity for something, whether it be nursing or medicine or computers, they can be identified early on, work with private industry to help subsidize some of those costs.
Yeah, I have a son in college too, and a daughter who hopefully will graduate from high school and go to college as well. You know, look, there's a few things we need to do. One is we need to make sure Pell Grants get adjusted for inflation. We need to allow students the ability to renegotiate their loans. Like, you know, if you get a loan for a mortgage for your house, if the interest rates go down, you can renegotiate it. Why can't students do the same thing? We need to eliminate the middleman when it comes to the loan process. I don't want somebody making money off of student loans because that just accrues the debt that students make. And so we should incentivize businesses that want to help students repay their loans if they get hired. And as far as the GI Bill of Rights go, I support it. So I think the GI Bill of Rights was a great idea. But we ought to figure out ways that we can make college more affordable in terms of maybe providing 2 years of free public education at a community college for students, who want to get started in a college career.
Mr. McGovern, what more can be done to reduce economic inequality?
There are a lot of things that can be done. One is, like here locally, we need to continue to try to attract more and more development because we want to create more and more opportunity here. We need to make sure our education system is responsive to the needs of the workforce. We need to support our vocational and technical education and our community colleges. We need to understand that if we're going to do tax relief for people, that tax relief ought to go to those in the middle and those struggling to get in the middle. The tax cut that the Republicans passed in Congress, 83% of it goes to the top 1% in this country. That doesn't help deal with the issue of inequality. We need to make sure that that people get the opportunities that they need to be able to compete in the current workplace, and we need to be planning for the jobs of tomorrow. But the other thing is, even locally here, we need to make sure that people in low-income neighborhoods have a seat at the table in terms of the development that we do locally here in the city. They need to be able to have a voice in how the development goes forward and who does the development.
You know, that's a very interesting question. You know, there was an article that came out in USA Today last April. It listed Worcester as on the top 20 most extreme poverty-stricken cities in the United States. It was on the same list as Baltimore and Detroit. And just 2 weeks ago in the Worcester Business Journal, we are the only city in New England, other than Springfield, whose poverty level has actually risen this year. When the rest of the country, and even the rest of the state, is benefiting from an increased economy, this state, we generated $2 billion of extra revenue because of these tax cuts and the increased economy. However, here in Worcester, we now have over 20% of our residents make less than $15,000 a year. We definitely are broken. That's something that I would do as a congressman, to come out and help facilitate that.
Our next category concerns questions specific to the candidates. In this case, the candidate has 1 minute to answer, and the other candidate has 30 seconds to respond. The first question goes to Ms. Lovvorn.
Ms. Lovvorn, if elected, you would be a freshman member of Congress. How could you be more effective for the district and the country than a member returning for a 12th term and holding ranking committee status that could wield considerable authority?
You know what, just by going down and actually rolling up my sleeves and getting to work. You know, one of the very first people that I would search out is a gentleman named Connor Lamb. Connor is a U.S. rep that I'm confident he's most likely going to win. He's down in Pennsylvania. He's a Democrat, and he's actually working. In 1 year, he's already sponsored 5 bills. One has already been signed into law, and another one is ready for signature. He's making an impact on right away. He hit the ground running. His 2 bills that he's working on are specific to the opioid epidemic. I would partner with as many people as I can that are new, that are fresh, that are wanting to actually get to work on every single one of the problems that Mr. McGovern has been listing tonight.
Well, I always think that'd be a better choice. But let me just say this. I want to say a couple of things. First of all, Ms. Lovvorn, don't trash my city. There's incredible progress going on here in Worcester.
I didn't make that up.
And it has been as a result of Democrats and Republicans and independents working together and believing in the city. Lots of things are happening here. We are a city on the move. We have some inequality issues here, but so does other cities and towns all across the country that we need to deal with. So, I mean, I have to say that for the record. Secondly, am I out of time? Okay.
I just stated a fact.
I'm sorry.
You trash my
You
city.
have a question
You
now?
trashed your city.
Mr. McGovern, we received 2 resident questions asking about term limits. Do you favor term limits? Why or why not?
No, I don't. I think the term limits that I favor are elections. And people have a choice in this election. I know Ms. Lovvorn favors term limits for me, but I haven't heard her favor them for state legislators that she works with and deals with, who are Republican. But I think taking power away from people, to me, doesn't make a lot of sense. What I do favor is changing the way we fund campaigns. I think what the Supreme Court did with Citizens United was a terrible decision. I think we need to take the money out of politics. I think we need to reverse Citizens United. We need to institute campaign finance reform. We need to take the money out of politics. If we did, I think we'd be able to debate a bill on universal background checks. I think we'd be able to debate a bill, dealing with climate change. I think we'd be able to debate a bill to control Wall Street. But because of all the big money that's going in to support the current leadership in Congress, all those things are off the table. So I don't favor term limits. I favor campaign finance reform.
Ms. Lovvorn, 30 seconds.
I think it's absolutely phenomenal that I'm sitting at this table next to a gentleman that wants campaign finance reform. I'm sitting at this table making it through a primary, sitting here running for Congress, and I've had $30,000 in my account. how much is too much money? You know, a PAC right now can give $10,000 or $5,000. To me, that's a lot of money. To Mr. McGovern, I guess it has to be more than that to count.
Ms. Lovvorn, you're a business owner, and nearly 10 years ago you filed a suit under the Federal False Claims Act against a chain of nursing and rehabilitation services for substandard Medicare and Medicaid nursing services that became part of a large federal settlement. What kind of consumer protections did you push for in Congress?
You know what, there's a fine line between that's exactly what we were talking about earlier as far as how regulations are necessary. It's excessive regulations that we need to decrease. I think the regulations in healthcare, again, they're not, when you go back to why regulations even happened in the nursing homes in the first place, they were horrible in the 80s. You know, we needed those regulations to keep those standards high. I guess just continued safety for all of us. I guess I don't really understand the question. Just regulations in general or being real specific?
The consumer protections regulations are out now?
Yeah,
What would you push for in Congress?
just to maintain whatever we need to keep safety, but balancing that without going too excessive, I guess would be my answer.
Look, at the end of the Bush years, our economy almost collapsed because of the excesses of Wall Street and the financial services industry. We had to bail everybody out because the economy was about to collapse. In the aftermath of that, we passed the Dodd-Frank consumer protection legislation to try to put some checks and balances in place so that what happened, that almost destroyed our country, would not happen again. I think that what we did with Dodd-Frank wasn't nearly enough. Quite frankly, I think some of these heads of these financial services institutions ought to go to jail.
Mr. McGovern, President Obama, with your support, began the process of normalizing U.S. relations with Cuba in 2014, including opening an embassy in each country. Since then, however, the Cuban government has continued to repress dissidents, members of the American embassy staff mysteriously became sick, and the Trump administration has imposed new travel and funding restrictions. What's your view of current relations between the U.S. and Cuba, and what needs to be done?
Look, I think our policy toward Cuba for the last six decades has been a disaster. It didn't help the Cuban people. It didn't change the regime. Basically, it emboldened hardliners in Cuba. I think that the way to open up political space is to allow people, U.S. citizens, to go to Cuba, to visit with Cubans, to travel the island. I think we can do more to help promote political space and human rights and democracy than all of the fiery speeches that can be given on the House floor. When I've been to Cuba and I've met with the Cuban leadership, I've always raised the issue of human rights. I co-chair the Tom Lantos Human Rights Commission. This human rights situation in Cuba continues to be a great concern to me. But I will tell you this, that over the years we have seen political space open more and more and more as a result of actions by 2 popes, actually 3 popes, and by increased exchanges with Canada and Europe and Asia. We're falling behind. We ought to be engaged with the Cuban people, and we currently are not nearly enough engaged.
Ms. Lovvorn, 30 seconds.
I just get confused on how he badmouths and hates Putin, but somehow likes Fidel. That confuses me so much, so often. That's all. I think as far as opening borders and trying to, always make things better, that sounds great. But to badmouth Putin and one just 10 minutes ago and now, his relationship with Fidel, it's always been just kind of strange.
In this next section, each candidate will ask their opponent a question. They were told in advance they would have this opportunity for a 1-minute response with no rebuttal. So, Ms. Lovvorn, your question for Mrs. McGovern.
I just found it fascinating. I was watching the Kavanaugh hearing, and When Dr. Ford was in the middle of her, not even in the middle, she had just started giving testimony, and Mr. McGovern came out very strong. I believe her, I believe women. I guess my question is back when Bill Clinton came to this room, well, maybe not to this room, but he came to Mechanics Hall, and you invited him right after Monica Lewinsky. I was just kind of wondering, did you believe those women at that time, or is there a very specific type of women that you support and believe in those kind of circumstances?
Good question.
Well, first of all, I think, Bill Clinton's personal life has been investigated, it has been reported on, and it has been litigated. I didn't approve of his behavior then. I told it to his face back then. But I do think that when women come forward, like Dr. Ford, they deserve to be believed. They deserve to have their accusations taken seriously. And when the President of the United States gets up at a rally and mocks and makes fun of a woman who said that she was sexually assaulted, it made me sick to my stomach. The FBI should have investigated, without any restrictions from the White House, thoroughly her allegations. This is not an elected position. This is a lifetime appointment. And so, yes, I believe Dr. Ford. I applaud the Me Too movement. I hope it gets stronger. So.
Could you answer the question though about Juanita Roderick, Paula Jones, and Monica Lewinsky? He didn't answer the question.
He answered the question. It's national. The voters will decide if that was an appropriate answer. And I want to accord both of you the same opportunity. So, Mr. McGovern, what's your question?
Yeah. So, Ms. Lovvorn, I looked at your campaign webpage, and some of the things you post, quite frankly, trouble me greatly. You posted numerous posts touting endorsements that you had jointly with Scott Lively. Scott Lively, as everybody knows, has spent much of his life trying to make being gay illegal. You posted a tweet from somebody who endorsed you, a radio personality, and I looked at his webpage, and it was filled with anti-Muslim hate. This is a guy who actually supported the so-called freedom of speech march in Boston, which is similar to the white supremacist march in Charlottesville. Now, I don't know whether you agree with these points of view or not, but when you post them, you legitimize them. And so my question to you is, do you share these viewpoints? And if not, why did you post them?
I don't have to share viewpoints to be able to listen to people. That's what's a difference between you and I don't have to support somebody, believe in everything they are, but I still want to listen to them. I still want to pay attention to what's important to them and what their concerns are. If somebody chooses to support me, that's great, I'll take the support. I'm not going to ever shut anybody out because we have differences in opinions.
I want to treat this about the same.
Okay.
No opportunities for
No, okay.
Okay, thank you. And that was something that was communicated in advance. In our final section, we have the same question for each of you, again, without rebuttal. Ms. Lovvorn, on what issue or issues do you agree with Mr. McGovern?
I guess overall there's not, I think in a lot of cases, like healthcare, I do believe in healthcare. I'm a healthcare professional, and I think it needs to be more affordable. I don't think when you, again, I think I might have already said this, but I don't think just changing the payer source of healthcare does anything for the cost or the availability. So I do believe that we both would agree that healthcare needs to be accessible. It needs to be, attainable for people. I think just well-being of people is definitely on our same list. I appreciate the fact that he is for human rights. I'm for human rights, I'm for civil rights, I'm for women's rights. I think a lot of times we just go about things a little bit differently. We do have the same end means, but I go about it, I trust people to make their own decisions, and I think he's a little bit more wanting government to tell us how to do things.
Mr. McGovern, 1 minute. On what issue or issues do you agree with Mr. Warren?
Well, I think when I was looking at your webpage, I think you had made reference to supporting the notion that businesses ought to be incentivized to help repay student loans for young people who have college debt. And if I interpreted that right, I certainly agree with you on that. Look, there are lots of differences between us. And if I could just take one moment here, Mr. Lovvorn mentioned that I was the 60th richest man in the United States Congress. I saw that on your webpage too. My wife wanted to know where I hid the money. And there was a little thing to click on. I think it was Open Secrets. I clicked it on and it demoted me to 111. So I think you better update your facts on that. But I just thought I would make that clear for the record because I didn't want anybody to get the wrong impression.
If it was 111, that's still out of 435 people.
Okay. It's time for the closing statements. Thank you very much, and thank you to the audience. And please hold any applause until after both closing statements are provided. We'll then have some final remarks for you all. By coin toss, in reverse of the opening statement, we begin with Mr. McGovern. 2 minutes.
Thank you. I want to thank the sponsors. I want to thank the audience. I want to thank Mr. Lovvorn for participating in this debate. Donald Trump likes to say, "Make America great again." Well, I believe we need to make America good again. I've always believed that America is a great country. I thank God every day that my kids were born in this country, the freest country in the world. I'm grateful to our veterans who have fought for our freedom and for our liberty. This is a great country. But I worry that we're losing our goodness. I worry that we're losing our humanity. The tone that the president has set is untenable. We have a president who degrades women. We have a president who lies on big policy issues and things as little as crowd size. We have a president who had to be shamed to lowering the flag to half-mast when John McCain died. We have a president who's engulfed in all kinds of corruption scandals. We can go on and on and on. But what is happening here, the attacks on his opponents, the constant, juvenile behavior is not normal. It is not who we are. Republicans and Democrats and independents need to stand together and say, we have had it with this. We need to do better. I have 2 kids. I want them to look at government as something that is good, that is clean, that is decent. There's a lot of issues on the ballot on November 6th. We've talked about many of them here today. But decency is on the ballot as well. We need to reclaim our goodness in this country. We need to demand a government to work for regular people, for working families, to be on the side of middle-class families in this country. And we need to demand that our government, in Lincoln's words, appeals to the better angels of our nation. We can do so much better than this. So we need to send a signal on November 6th. I ask for your vote, and I hope that I not only get your vote and win re-election, I hope Democrats win all across the country, and we can reclaim our government and end this Republican monopoly on Washington and be able to restore some checks and balance in our government. Thank you very much.
Did you just hear that? Am I just imagining this? That's what I'm talking about. That's what this election is about. It's not normal to be so, yes, them and us. We're not them and us. We're us. When I'm running to be your representative, I want to represent us. Not once have I mentioned Jim McGovern's party. Not one time. He's running against Tracy. He's not running against Trump. He wound everything up into an us versus them. Even when he was bad-mouthing the other presidents, he only bad-mouthed Bush. It's always Republican or Democrat, Republican or Democrat. That's what's gotten us into the mess that we're in right now. I want to work for you guys. And when I wasn't bad-mouthing his city, that's our city. And when 20% of our population is making less than $15,000 a year, something is wrong. And yeah, there's some great stuff going on in Shrewsbury Street, and we have a lot of good energy, but you know what? That's called gentrification. That's a lot of haves versus have-nots. That's called Tale of Two Cities, and that ends very, very bad. We have an opportunity right now to make a choice. I'm offering us a choice. I want to work for you. I want to work for all of us. I want to be your voice. I am tired of the extremism, the partisanship. Nothing is happening in Washington, and I want to go down there and make it work for us.
Now, please don't get up yet. We have a closing acknowledgement from one of our debate partners, the Worcester Regional Chamber of Commerce. Here is Kate Sherry, who is the chair of the Chamber's Board of Directors.
Wow, that was great. Thank you so much. So again, my name is Kate Sherry, and I'm president and owner of Group Benefit Strategies, and I also have the distinct pleasure of being representing the Worcester Regional Chamber of Commerce as the chairman of the board of directors. I'd first and foremost like to thank our sponsor, Mechanics Hall, and their entire staff for hosting this important event at this historic location. I'd also like to thank the rest of our sponsors, the Telegram Gazette, the League of Women Voters, the Massachusetts Women of Color Coalition, and the Worcester Regional Chamber of Commerce. I'd like to thank the debate committee who worked tirelessly to put this program together, and specifically our moderators, Meryl Kessler, Executive Director of the League of Women Voters of Massachusetts, Celia Blue, President, Central Region, Massachusetts Women of Color Coalition, and Tony Similardis, Editor of the editorial pages of the Telegram Gazette. And lastly, I'd like to thank our candidates, incumbent James P. McGovern, Tracy Lovvorn, great to see everyone come out tonight. We're fortunate to have two great candidates vying to represent the 2nd Congressional District to help the Commonwealth and the nation grow as a whole. Having you all here this evening, taking time out of your busy schedules is an indicator of how important this election is. With the political climate as it is, debates like these are more critical than ever, and informed voters are more critical than ever as well. So thank you so much to everyone who came out tonight. And again, if you want to sign up for the League of Women Voters, there's a table in the back of the room, and I will give you permission for one more round of applause for our candidates.